Hello everyone, I'm Phantom, and I love Elden Ring. I've played it, streamed it, hundreds of hours, burned into it, every achievement, level 40 characters, cleared every boss, every item, blah blah blah, the list just keeps going on. My most popular video I've ever made is an Elden Ring build guide. There's no shortage of praises that I can and have given towards this masterpiece, but today I wanted to do something that's a little bit different because I want to actually give a proper critique towards the game. Well, I can unabashedly say without hesitation that Elden Ring is the best game I've ever played. There actually are problems with it, and this is in no way me trying to say, well, the game's amazing, but it has these problems. This is me saying the game's amazing, and if these problems were fixed, it would be actually perfect. So this is actually one of two videos that are going to be going over two of the most largest scale problems that Elden Ring has. One of the videos will address the worst gameplay-centered problem, and one video will address the worst thematic problem with the game. At the end of each video, there will be a card pop up on the screen to the other video, so if you're interested to see what I have to say about the other thing as well, you can check that out. Otherwise, you can check out the channel, subscribe to see my uploads directly, etc. Thematically, Elden Ring is From Software's most diverse and dense project that they have ever worked on. Their world is incredibly vast, and yet is still absolutely stuffed to the brim with content, side stories, even just the littlest bit of storytelling in the world itself absolutely blows anything else out of the water. There are more characters, groups, areas, classifications, backgrounds, questlines, events, the list keeps going on than there has been in any of the old Souls games combined. However, one part of the extremely diverse array of abilities, weapons, and spells and other means of combat is really overlooked and is honestly a fair bit annoying. Inconsistency. While a lot of gameplay categories are fleshed out, consolidated, enjoyable, they feel like they've been planned out, and when you play with them, you feel like, they took time out of their day and they dedicated a proper chunk of their resources towards making this feel good. Things like the Golden Order incantations, carrion spells and weapons, various arcane and bleed weapons of the Bloody Fingers, the list goes on. But then there are other categories and areas that are just kinda all over the place, and it just seems like a general oversight on behalf of the creators. For clemency's sake, I'm going to restrict myself to just a few examples. To start off, there are only two weapons in the game that give sleep buildup. Sleep is only one of a few special effects that are caused by anything in the game, and the Sword of St. Trina and St. Trina's Torch are the only two weapons in the game that actually do anything with it. Both are based around Miquella's alter ego St. Trina and do sleep, so obviously it makes sense they go together, right? Wrong. You see, the sword scales off of intelligence, and the torch scales off of faith. Why? I've got absolutely no fucking clue, man. In order for you to use both, you have to build two separate stats that have absolutely no overlap, and it's just for two weapons. It doesn't make any sense. This kind of slight oversight is even more prevalent in the sources of quote-unquote, as the game's text states, death. You see, Elden Ring actually has two sources of death. Death Blight and Ghost Flame. Ghost Flame is the deathly power of the Deathrite birds, while Death Blight is the deathly power of those who live in death and follow the dreaming god, or the dreaming dead god, Godwyn the Golden. You would think they're separate, right? At least those two things seem like they would be pretty separate from each other, but that's also wrong again. You can't just build one or the other and have a proper thematic going. Ghost Flame weapons scale only off of intelligence, not faith. Their abilities deal damage based off of intelligence. Their AR is scaled based off of their intelligence. The weapon arts scale primarily off of the intelligence stat that you have. But Ghost Flame death spells require a pretty decent investment in faith, which is not reflected on the weapons at all. Imagine if you wanted to do a carrion knight build, but in order to use the thrust attack, you had to have 30 arcane. It doesn't make sense, but they do it. They do it here. Ghost Flame is primarily intelligence if you consider weapons, but not spells. And the only staff that will give you a bonus % of damage to these Ghost Flame death spells is the Prince of Death staff, a staff based around Godwyn that requires faith to use. That's not even the same death. Speaking of Godwyn, Deathblight, the other death theme, has only 3 tools: the Eclipse Shuttle, Death Lightning, and Fia's Mist. The Shuttle can be buffed with Deathblight power, making it the only Deathblight weapon in the game. However, this weapon only scales off of Faith. No intelligence, setting it apart from both the Prince of Death staff and the Ghost Flame weapon. So it makes sense that it's different, right? But then you have Death Lightning, the only Deathblight incantation, and it is a massive Faith investment. So obviously, if 2 of the 3 sources of Deathblight are solely Faith-oriented, at least you can do some sort of Deathblight build with Faith, right? The third thing will be, right? It's gotta be. But no, Fia's Mist requires intelligence. And the staff that boosts death spells, the one that requires faith and intelligence, it doesn't actually boost Fia's Mist. So the death staff of the Deathblight god doesn't actually affect Deathblight. There is no overlap whatsoever. So the Godwyn staff doesn't buff anything involving Godwyn himself. Well, just use a weapon that scales off of both faith and intelligence, right? Double dip, go into both, and then you'll be able to utilize all the different aspects of death effectively, right? No. There is no death weapon that scales off of faith and intelligence. There's only one weapon in the game that scales off of faith and intelligence, and that's the Sword of Night and Flame, which is fire and magic, making it even more impossible to build up Deathblight. There are many examples of things like this in the game, classifications that just don't make sense with themselves. But what if we look at the world's thematics, okay? Taking a step away from the more meta level, trying to make a build based around a specific effect, let's try and look at groupings in the world, areas that have something to do with themselves or other things that you could possibly do thematic stuff off of, right? That's potentially going to be done better. Well, let's take a step aside and look at that a little bit more closely. The recurring areas that bother me the most, while simultaneously being some of my favorite areas in the entire game, are the Eternal Cities. So let's take a look at the town of Celia. They taught Radon the gravity magic that he mastered. They taught him how to launch meteors, fly to the sky, ride his tiny horse, but they don't use any gravity magic. They are all associated with night magic, right? That's where you get all the night magic spells, the special spells of the sorcerers of Celia. They don't even use it. They shoot normal spells. However, the town of Celia is being instructed in these ways thanks to the influence of 2 important figures in the town that you may have never actually met. You see, if you get past the puzzles, you get to fight the boss, the twin bosses, Nox Swordstress and Night Maiden, envoys of the Eternal City below Celia. Super cool, honestly. So it makes sense then, going off the Night Maiden's Mist spell, it seems that they are a key part in Celia's dark and secretive magic. You see, according to Eternal Darkness, it is a forbidden ancient sorcery of the Eternal City, after all. But the Nox don't ever use night magic, ever. They cast no spells. They don't have spellcasters. The Night Maidens will blow their mist, but they don't cast it. They don't even have a staff. They just hold up their knife that you can't even get. And all of the weapons that the Nox Swordstresses and the monks in them use, strictly quality build. No intelligence and no faith. If you put intelligence towards the spells, you are actively kicking yourself in the nuts if you want to use any weapons involving the Eternal Cities. You would have to waste your points to do it. And then there's the Silver Mimic Tears. They're a super cool and important part of the Nox's story, right? So obviously the super cool Mimic Tier helmet might, no, that gives Arcane. A stat that has literally no interaction with a single part of anything else in the entirety of the Eternal Cities. Get to the second Eternal City and you'll start to see these Mimic Tiers using lightning. Maybe lightning is the saving grace though. You see, the Dragonkin soldiers wield a cool ass ice lightning spell, so surely we can do something with that? No. The Ice Lightning incantation is faith-based and is considered an ancient dragon cult incantation, which means it has more in common with Leyndell than the actual Nox cities. Even though the flavor text says it's a failed attempt to mimic the power of dragons, it's still considered a dragon incantation. Oh, and the dragon halberd that's wreathed in this Ice Lightning, pure quality. No faith. These 2 items, the only 2 Ice Lightning things in the whole game, no overlap, A really big part of me really hopes FromSoft will come back and kind of rectify some of this stuff, because it's completely pointless. Why make the St. Trina weapons completely detached? Why make a Godwin staff that doesn't have anything to do with Godwin? Why not just make it a staff involving, like, the Deathrite birds? You look at Madness, everything involving Madness uses Faith. Everything in Blood, Poison, and Rot uses Arcane. So why do these other groups not consolidate? It won't negatively affect anything. You have wizards out here one-shotting bosses. What's gonna be so bad about the 3 sources of Deathblight actually sharing the same primary stat? Nobody's going to use the other stuff. There's a reason why you only see, like, Giant's Flame and Carrion people. If they're going to use any sort of spells or incantations, they stick to those, like, 2 or 3 things, because there's no point in using anything else. It's wasted potential. There's so much diversity in the items, and most of said diversity never gets used because it does not synergize with anything else. I don't know what they're gonna do, if they're gonna kind of bridge the gap between these things, or if they're actually going to, like, fix it, or whatever they decide to do, but it bothers me, man. It genuinely bothers me. Again, it feels weird criticizing this game, considering this game has given me the most enjoyment in the past decade out of any game I've ever played, but it is important that we convey the aspects that need improvement to FromSoft. There's nothing wrong with wanting the game you love to be the best it possibly can be. So, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. How has your experience been with the different thematic groups of the game? Have you been able to find ones that make you happy? Have you been off-put by the fact that something genuinely interests you, but you can't really make it work? If you liked the video, leave a like. Check out the other part to my Criticizing Elden Ring mini-series. You guys take care of yourselves, have a great night, and I will see you all later. Goodbye.